I still remember that day in the hospital. Bright sunlight poured through the windows, and everything seemed calm until she appeared. A woman in her late 40s, wearing an expensive coat and an expression that screamed entitlement. She was one of those people who believed the world owed them everything, a true Karen. My sister, Emma, had just come out of surgery and needed her wheelchair to move around. She was pale, weak, and barely able to speak. I had gone to get her some water when I heard shouting echoing down the hallway. When I rushed back, I froze. Karen was yelling at a nurse, pointing at Emma's wheelchair like it was hers. "That's my chair," she barked. "I was promised this wheelchair first. I have back problems." The nurse tried to explain that the wheelchair belonged to a recovering patient, my sister, but Karen wouldn't listen. She kept shouting, demanding everyone listen to her rights. Then, shockingly, she grabbed the handles and started wheeling it away with Emma still sitting in it. Emma's eyes filled with fear as she tried to protest, but Karen just scowled and said, "Don't pretend you can't walk. I saw you stand earlier." That was a lie. Emma hadn't stood once since her operation. I shouted for security, my heart racing. Within minutes, 2 guards came rushing in. Karen kept insisting the chair was hers until one of them calmly pointed to the corner of the ceiling. A camera security footage doesn't lie. When they played it back, it showed everything: her yelling, lying, and trying to steal a sick woman's wheelchair. Her face turned red as she realized the truth had trapped her, but that was only the beginning of her downfall. Asterisk. The sun shone brightly through the large glass windows of St. Mary's General Hospital, filling the hallways with soft daylight. Outside, cars moved lazily through the parking lot, and the sound of chirping birds could still be heard faintly through the open windows. It was one of those rare peaceful days that made you feel like everything was finally going right. Inside, I sat next to my younger sister Emma, who was lying quietly in her hospital bed after her long-awaited surgery. She looked fragile but calm, her pale skin contrasting with the white bed. The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor beside her had become oddly comforting to me, a steady reminder that she was alive and healing. Emma had gone through a tough few months before that day. Her mobility had been declining because of a severe spinal condition, and walking even short distances became painful. After many tests and consultations, her doctors finally scheduled the corrective surgery that could help her regain some of her movement. It wasn't an easy decision, but Emma faced it with courage. She was only 24, yet she handled her health issues with a quiet strength that always amazed me. The surgery went well, but recovery was slow, and she needed a wheelchair to move around until her spine fully healed. When the nurses brought in her wheelchair that morning, Emma smiled faintly. "Finally, I can go outside again, even if it's just the hospital garden," she whispered. Her voice was soft, almost hopeful. I smiled back. "We'll go later, I promised, once you've rested a bit." She nodded and closed her eyes, letting the sunlight fall over her face. Around noon, I decided to grab her some bottled water and a sandwich from the cafeteria downstairs. The hallways were quiet except for the squeaky sound of cleaning carts and the occasional nurse rushing by. I remember thinking how peaceful everything felt. No alarms, no emergencies, just calm. I had no idea that, within minutes, that calm would shatter completely. When I returned with the water, I heard raised voices coming from down the hall. At first I thought it was a patient arguing with a visitor, but as I got closer, the tone became sharper, angrier. "This is unacceptable. I've been waiting for 20 minutes. A woman's voice snapped. Her words echoed through the sterile corridor. Curious, I slowed my steps. Standing near the nurse's station was a woman who looked to be in her late 40s. She wore a beige trench coat that looked expensive, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, and her perfectly styled blonde hair suggested she'd just come from a salon. Even from a distance, she carried an air of superiority, the kind of person who believed the world should bend to her will. The nurse she was yelling at tried to stay calm. "Ma'am, please be patient. We're trying to find an available wheelchair for your discharge." But the woman cut her off. "But what, you think I'm going to walk out of here? My back is killing me. I was promised a wheelchair 30 minutes ago." I shook my head and kept walking toward Emma's room, feeling bad for the nurse who was clearly just doing her job. But when I turned the corner and saw my sister's room up ahead, my stomach dropped. That same woman, the one yelling at the nurse, was now standing right outside Emma's door. I quickened my pace. Through the open doorway, I saw her standing next to Emma's bed, hands gripping the handles of the wheelchair the nurse had placed there earlier. Emma looked scared and confused. Her face was pale, and her voice trembled as she spoke. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This is my chair. I can't walk yet." The woman huffed impatiently. "Don't be ridiculous. I was told there were no spare chairs, and this one's just sitting here. You can wait for another one. I need to leave now." I froze for a second, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This stranger, this Karen, was actually trying to take my sister's wheelchair. My first instinct was disbelief. Who does something like that? "Hey," I said sharply, stepping into the room. "That's her chair. What do you think you're doing?" Karen turned to look at me with a glare that could melt glass. "I'm getting what I was promised. The staff here are incompetent, and I don't have time to wait for them. I have a serious back injury and I can't stand around all day." "She just had spinal surgery," I shot back. "She literally can't walk yet." You can't take her wheelchair. But Karen was unmoved. She adjusted her sunglasses and crossed her arms. Then tell the nurse to bring me another one immediately. I'm not waiting. Before I could respond, Emma tried to speak again, her voice trembling. Please, I really can't move without it. The nurse said it's mine. Karen rolled her eyes, muttering under her breath, oh, please. I saw you move earlier. You're not fooling anyone. That was the moment my patience snapped. You what? You think she's faking being disabled? I said, my voice rising. But she ignored me completely. With an impatient sigh, she reached for the wheelchair handles again. I stepped in front of her and blocked her path. Touch that chair again, and we'll have a real problem, I said, keeping my voice low but firm. My heart was pounding in my chest. Emma's breathing had quickened. The stress was clearly hurting her, and that only made me angrier. Karen looked me up and down, clearly deciding whether to argue or back off. Her lips curled into a smirk. You people have no idea how hard it is living with real pain. Some of us actually need help, not just attention. I couldn't believe the cruelty in her words. She's just had surgery, I repeated slowly. You need to leave now. The nurse from earlier appeared behind her looking flustered. Ma'am, the nurse said firmly, that wheelchair belongs to this patient. You cannot take it. I've already told you we're bringing one for you shortly. Karen turned on her, her voice sharp again. I'm being discriminated against. I'm in pain, and you're all treating me like a liar. The nurse stood her ground. No one's discriminating against you, ma'am. But this patient's wheelchair is not available for you. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Emma's eyes were glossy with tears, her hand gripping the blanket tightly. I wanted to comfort her, but I had to make sure Karen didn't try anything else. Finally, Karen let go of the wheelchair and threw her hands up dramatically. Fine, I'll go talk to someone in charge. Clearly, none of you care about patients. She stormed out, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. When she was gone, I finally exhaled the breath I'd been holding. The nurse gave me an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that, she said softly. She's been difficult all morning. I looked at Emma, who was still trembling slightly. I sat beside her and held her hand again. It's okay, I whispered. She's gone. Emma nodded weakly and tried to smile. People can be so cruel, she said. Yeah, I agreed, brushing her hair back gently. But they can't get away with it forever. Outside, the sunlight still streamed through the window, warm and bright, a sharp contrast to the ugliness that had just unfolded. I didn't know it then, but that was only the beginning. What happened next would reveal just how far that woman was willing to go, and how karma would come back for her in the most unexpected way. Asterisk. The next morning, the hospital seemed even brighter than usual. Sunlight poured through the tall glass windows in the hallway, reflecting off the freshly polished floors. Nurses hurried between rooms, carrying trays and medication, while the faint sound of monitors beeped steadily in the background. Everything about the day seemed calm, at least at first glance. But after yesterday's shocking encounter, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was still off. Emma was sitting up in her bed. When I came back from the cafeteria with breakfast, she looked a little stronger than before, but the color hadn't fully returned to her cheeks. The wheelchair sat beside her bed like a loyal companion, silent, sturdy, and absolutely necessary. How are you feeling? I asked, setting the tray down. A bit better, she said, giving me a small smile. I even slept a little last night. I kept dreaming that crazy woman was chasing me with a shopping cart. I laughed softly. If she ever comes near you again, I'll make sure security handles her before she gets the chance. We both thought the nightmare was over, that Karen had left the hospital and we'd never see her again. But sometimes life has a cruel sense of humor. Around mid-morning, a nurse came in to check Emma's vitals. As she adjusted the 4 drip, she sighed. You won't believe this, she said. That woman from yesterday, she's still here. Emma's eyes widened. What? She's refusing to leave until she talks to the head of administration, the nurse explained. Apparently she's filed a complaint saying staff treated her unfairly and that someone stole her wheelchair. I blinked in disbelief. Her wheelchair? She tried to steal ours. The nurse nodded sympathetically. I know, but people like that ... They twist the truth. Security's keeping an eye on her, but she's been causing a scene in the lobby all morning. Emma groaned. I just want peace. Why can't she leave us alone? I tried to reassure her. Don't worry, we'll stay in the room. If she tries anything, we'll call for help immediately. But as fate would have it, peace didn't last long. Around noon, I decided to wheel Emma to the small courtyard outside for some fresh air. The nurse said it would be good for her recovery. The courtyard was lovely, a peaceful garden with benches, flowers, and a small fountain surrounded by bright sunlight. Emma smiled as the breeze touched her face. It feels good to breathe real air again, she said softly. We sat there quietly for a few minutes, enjoying the warmth of the day. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a familiar figure walking briskly across the path. My stomach dropped. It was her. Karen. She was wearing the same beige trench coat, though her hair looked a little messier this time. Her face was set in an expression of anger and false confidence. The kind of look people wear when they're determined to get their way, no matter how wrong they are. She spotted us instantly. Her eyes narrowed, and before I could react, she was marching straight toward us. "Oh, for heaven's sake," I muttered under my breath. Emma froze, gripping the sides of her wheelchair. "Is she coming here?" Unfortunately, yes. Within seconds, Karen was standing right in front of us, hands on her hips. "So, you're the ones," she snapped. "You're the reason I didn't get the wheelchair I needed yesterday." I stood up immediately, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, you tried to take my sister's wheelchair, one she needs after surgery. We don't owe you anything." Karen's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. "Oh, please, don't act like saints. I know what I saw. She can walk perfectly fine." "She can't," I said sharply. "You're wrong," Karen scoffed. "You think you can fool me? I've seen scams like this before, people faking injuries to get sympathy or special treatment." Emma's voice trembled. "I'm not faking anything. I had surgery. You can ask any doctor here." But Karen wasn't listening. She was too wrapped up in her own story. "I told the administration everything. I even demanded they review the footage, but apparently they're too busy protecting liars to care about honest patients like me." I clenched my fists, struggling to stay composed. "You're unbelievable. You tried to steal a wheelchair from a recovering patient, and now you're doubling down on your lies." Her eyes flashed with anger. "What's your tone? I've been dealing with chronic pain for years, and I deserve respect." "Respect?" I repeated. "You lost that the moment you touched her wheelchair." Karen leaned closer, her voice dripping with mock pity. "You're just trying to cover up for her. I bet when no one's looking, she walks just fine." That was the last straw. I stepped between her and Emma. "You need to leave right now, before I call security again." Karen straightened up and crossed her arms defiantly. "Go ahead. Call them. I'll tell them how you threatened me." Her tone was smug, as if she truly believed her lies could protect her. But as she stood there ranting, something remarkable happened. One of the hospital's security officers appeared from around the corner. "He must have noticed her storming into the courtyard, ma'am," the guard said firmly. "We've already warned you about bothering other patients. You need to come with me." Karen turned toward him, offended. "Excuse me, I'm the victim here. These people are harassing me." The guard didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the footage from yesterday. We saw what happened outside the recovery room." For a moment, Karen looked startled, her confidence faltering. "Yes," the guard said evenly. "There are cameras in the hallway. It shows you approaching this patient's room, grabbing her wheelchair, and yelling at the nurse." Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her face flushed bright red. That's ridiculous. Those cameras must have caught the wrong angle." The guard shook his head. "They didn't. We've shown the video to hospital administration. You've been officially banned from this area. If you continue to harass patients, the police will be contacted." Emma and I sat there in silence, stunned. For the first time, Karen seemed speechless. Her eyes darted between the guard, me, and Emma. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. Finally, she turned away sharply. "This place is corrupt," she muttered. "You'll all regret treating me like this." Then she stormed off, her heels clicking furiously against the pavement. When she disappeared into the hospital, I exhaled slowly, realizing how tense I'd been. The guard gave us both a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said. "We'll make sure she doesn't come near you again." Emma let out a shaky laugh. "That woman needs therapy. Or a reality check," I added. The courtyard was quiet again, and the fountain's soft bubbling filled the silence. The sunlight glimmered across Emma's wheelchair like a symbol of quiet strength. She looked up at me and smiled faintly. "I guess the truth really does catch up to people." I nodded, finally allowing myself to relax. "Yeah," I said softly. "And sometimes, it's caught on camera." We stayed in the garden a little longer, soaking in the warmth of the day. The tension slowly faded, replaced by a sense of calm. The calm that comes when you know justice, even in a small way, has been served. But deep down I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't finished yet. People like her rarely let go so easily. The next day began like any other. Sunlight spilled through the window blinds, and the faint chatter of nurses filled the corridor. I had almost convinced myself that the chaos with Karen was finally over. Emma was doing better. Her pain had lessened and the doctors were happy with her progress. We were both hopeful that soon she'd be strong enough to go home. But deep down, a part of me remained uneasy. The hospital staff had assured us that Karen had been warned and restricted from visiting our floor. Yet something about her stubbornness made me doubt she'd truly given up. People like her, the ones who believed rules didn't apply to them, rarely disappeared quietly. Emma was in good spirits that morning. She was watching a cooking show on the small TV above her bed when I walked in with breakfast. "Pancakes again," she teased as I set the tray down. "Hey, don't complain," I said with a grin. "Hospital pancakes might be your new favorite thing." She laughed softly. "They're not bad, just not like home." I nodded, sitting beside her. "Soon Em will be out of here before you know it." For a while, it really did feel like a normal day. Nurses came and went, the doctor checked her vitals, and the sun outside painted golden patterns on the floor. I even stepped out for a quick coffee downstairs. But when I came back, the atmosphere had changed. From halfway down the hall I could hear voices again, sharp, angry voices. My heart sank instantly. As I turned the corner, I froze. There she was. Karen. She was standing at the nurse's station, her face twisted with frustration, arguing loudly with a nurse who looked exhausted. I don't care what your little computer says, Karen snapped. I have every right to be here. My mother is admitted on this floor, and I'm going to visit her. The nurse shook her head. Ma'am, your mother is not a patient here, and according to security records, you've been restricted from this ward. Please, don't make this more difficult. Karen slammed her hand on the counter. You're lying. This is harassment. I felt my pulse quicken. It was obvious she didn't have any mother here. She just wanted another chance to stir trouble. I clenched my jaw and walked toward her seriously. I said, my voice cutting through the argument. Haven't you caused enough problems already? Karen turned to face me, her eyes narrowing the moment she recognized me. Oh, it's you, she said, her tone dripping with venom. The self-righteous sibling who thinks they can play hero. I folded my arms. If protecting my sister makes me a hero, then yeah, I'll take it. She sneered. You don't know what you're talking about. I came here to speak to administration. They still haven't handled my complaint properly. You mean the complaint where you lied about stealing someone's wheelchair? I shot back. Her nostrils flared. Watch your mouth. You don't want to get sued for slander. I actually laughed a bitter, tired laugh. Sue me for what? Telling the truth. You tried to take a medical device from a recovering patient, and the cameras caught you doing it. What's left to argue? The nurse raised her hand calmly. Ma'am, please lower your voice, she said to Karen. This is a patient floor. But Karen wasn't listening. Her voice only got louder. You people are all the same. You take sides without knowing the facts. That girl's faking her condition. Anyone can see that. She's been using that wheelchair for attention. My heart pounded in my chest. That's enough, I snapped. You don't know her, you don't know what she's been through, and you have no right to speak about her like that. More people were starting to look now. Nurses, patients, even a doctor passing by. Karen didn't care. If anything, she seemed to thrive on the attention. Oh, I have every right, she said coldly. You think you can embarrass me, ruin my reputation? I've already spoken to a lawyer. When I'm done with this place, that footage won't mean a thing. The nurse quietly called security over her radio while trying to calm the situation. Please, let's move away from the patient area, she said. Karen ignored her. Where is she anyway? She asked, looking around. Your little actress, sister probably standing up right now, huh? Walking around when no one's looking. That was it. I stepped forward, my voice low and firm. You're going to stop right now. You're done harassing her. You're done making up stories. Go before you make this worse. She smirked. Oh, I've already made it worse for you. Before I could reply, she suddenly shoved past me and started walking toward Emma's room. I rushed after her. Hey, get away from her room. When I caught up, she was already inside. Emma looked up, startled, as Karen stood there with her arms crossed. I knew it, Karen said mockingly. Sitting here pretending to be sick, getting special treatment while people like me are ignored. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Please leave, she whispered. I don't want any trouble. Trouble? Karen laughed harshly. You are the trouble. You think you can fake a condition, waste everyone's time, and play the victim. I moved quickly between them. Out, I said, my voice steady but deadly serious now. Make me, she said, stepping closer. It was then that security arrived, 2 guards both looking weary but determined. Ma'am, one said firmly, step away from the patient. Karen spun around, her face red with fury. Oh, fantastic. My stalkers are here. Are you going to drag me out again for asking questions? The guard didn't respond. Instead, he gestured toward the hallway. Let's go. You've already been warned. Karen crossed her arms tightly, refusing to move. I'm not leaving until someone admits this girl is lying. The second guard stepped forward. Ma'am, we're not going to argue. If you don't leave willingly, we'll escort you. For a moment, it looked like she might resist. Then, realizing she had no power left, she huffed and stormed toward the door. But before leaving, she turned to Emma and said something that sent chills down my spine. This isn't over, she hissed. People like you always get exposed sooner or later. Then she was gone, escorted by the guards down the hallway, her angry muttering echoing behind her. When the room finally fell silent, Emma let out a shaky breath. Why is she doing this? She whispered. Why does she hate me so much? I sat beside her and took her hand. Because she can't stand being wrong, I said softly. And she hates that everyone saw her for what she is. Emma's eyes glistened with tears, but she nodded. She's scary, she admitted. What if she comes back again? She won't, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. Security's handling it. And next time, they won't just warn her, they'll make sure she's banned from the entire hospital. Outside, the sun continued to shine, but the peace we'd felt earlier was gone. The world outside looked normal, but inside that hospital room, we both felt shaken, like a storm had passed through and left invisible scars behind. As Emma slowly drifted to sleep, I sat quietly by her side, staring at the doorway she had just left through. The light in the hallway flickered faintly, and I couldn't help but wonder if we'd truly seen the last of Karen. Something told me that even though she'd been dragged out again, her obsession, her twisted need to prove herself right wasn't finished yet, and the next time she came back, I feared she'd try something even worse. The following day began quietly, almost deceptively peaceful. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, bathing Emma's hospital room in a warm golden glow. The events of the previous afternoon, Karen's wild accusations, her shouting, her being dragged out by security felt like a bad dream that had finally ended. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to relax. Emma was sitting up in bed, flipping through a magazine, looking stronger than I'd seen her in weeks. Her color had returned, and her smile was genuine. "You know," she said softly, "maybe today will actually be normal." I laughed a little. "I'd say we deserve a normal day." For most of the morning, things really did seem better. The nurses came in with cheerful smiles. The doctor was pleased with Emma's progress, and even the usually cold hospital air felt a little warmer. I went downstairs to get us both some coffee, thinking maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind us. But when I stepped out of the elevator on my way back up, I could tell something was wrong. 2 security officers were standing near the nurses' station, talking in hushed voices. Their expressions were serious. I slowed my pace and listened. "She came back this morning," one of them said, "tried to sneak in through the east entrance." My heart skipped a beat. I didn't need to hear the rest. I knew exactly who they were talking about. Karen quickened my steps and reached Emma's room. She was still reading, unaware of what was happening. "Emma," I said gently, closing the door behind me, "just stay calm, okay? I think Karen might be back in the building." Her face fell instantly. "You're serious?" I heard the guards talking. "They said she tried to come in again, but I don't know if they caught her yet." Emma's breathing quickened. "Why is she doing this? What does she want from us?" I shook my head. "I don't know. But whatever she's planning, she's not getting near you again. I promise." I moved her wheelchair closer to the bed, just in case we needed to move quickly. My pulse was racing now, and every sound in the hallway made me tense. But a few minutes later there was a knock on the door. Firm, controlled. It was one of the same security guards from before, Officer Daniel. He was a calm, broad-shouldered man who always seemed unbothered, but today, even he looked frustrated. "Good morning," he said as he stepped in. "I just wanted to check in with you both. We've had another incident." And Emma's voice trembled slightly. "She's back, isn't she?" Daniel nodded. "She came through the east entrance about 30 minutes ago. Said she had an appointment with hospital administration, but we caught her near the staff elevators." I frowned. "What was she doing there?" "Claiming she had proof that she was being discriminated against," Daniel said. "She was carrying a folder of papers and kept saying she wanted to show management that she was the real victim." Emma sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. "Why won't she just stop?" Daniel gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, ma'am. We're handling it. We've already pulled the security footage from the last few days to document everything that caught my attention. You have the footage from the day she first tried to take the wheelchair." He nodded. "Every angle. Hallway cameras, lobby footage, and even one near this room. We're reviewing it all to make sure there's no misunderstanding." Emma looked down, visibly shaken. "I can't believe it's come to this." Daniel placed a comforting hand on the bed railing. "Sometimes people like her dig their own graves. The truth always shows up on camera." He left shortly after, promising to return once the footage had been reviewed. For the next couple of hours, the tension in the room was unbearable. Emma tried to distract herself by watching TV, but her eyes kept drifting toward the door. I paced the room restlessly, checking my phone every few minutes. Finally, around noon, Officer Daniel returned, this time with another guard and a hospital administrator. The administrator, a tall woman named Ms. Green, had a kind but stern expression. She carried a tablet in her hand. "Good afternoon," she said politely. "We've reviewed all the footage regarding the incidents involving Miss Karen Lewis." Emma and I exchanged glances, and I asked. Ms. Green took a deep breath. "It's clear as day. Every single thing that happened has been caught on video, from her yelling at staff to her trying to take your wheelchair, even the moment she accused you of faking your condition." Emma looked both relieved and nervous. "So, they'll finally make her stop?" Ms. Green nodded firmly. "We've already contacted hospital security and local authorities. Given the repeated harassment and disruption of medical care, we'll be filing a trespassing and harassment report. She won't be allowed on hospital grounds again." I exhaled in relief. Thank God. But Daniel raised a hand. "There's something else you should know." He turned the tablet toward us, playing the footage. On the screen, we saw the hallway from 2 days ago, Emma sitting quietly in her chair while I argued with Karen. The footage clearly showed Karen yelling, grabbing the wheelchair handles, and trying to wheel Emma away while the nurse intervened. Then it switched to another angle, Karen arguing in the courtyard, lying to the guards, and storming off. But what truly shocked me was what came next. The footage from that very morning, that camera showed Karen sneaking in through a side door, looking around nervously. She was carrying a large envelope and talking on her phone. Then she slipped into a staff corridor, where she began opening random office doors. "What was she doing?" I asked quietly. Daniel zoomed in slightly. "It looks like she was trying to find administrative files." maybe to take something she could use as fake evidence. She was caught right after this frame. Emma covered her mouth. She's insane. Ms. Green nodded gravely. She was shouting about exposing corruption when they detained her. Clearly, she's convinced herself of a false narrative. I stared at the footage again. There it was, undeniable truth. All her cruelty, her lies, her arrogance, frozen forever on camera. It was the proof we needed, and it made me realize how much worse things could have gotten if the cameras hadn't been there when the video ended. Ms. Green closed the tablet and said softly, "You don't need to worry anymore. She's been removed from the premises. The authorities will handle her now." Emma nodded slowly, tears of relief welling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I just want to heal in peace." Daniel smiled kindly. "And now you can. She won't be back." After they left, the room fell quiet again. The sunlight glowed warmly across Emma's blanket, and for the first time in days, her shoulders relaxed. I sat beside her, finally allowing the exhaustion to catch up to me. "It's over," I said softly. Emma leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "Yeah," she whispered, "it's really over." But as I looked out the window at the courtyard below, a strange thought crossed my mind. Some people can't handle the truth, and when the truth finally catches them, they break. I couldn't help but wonder what Karen was thinking now, sitting somewhere with her lies exposed, realizing that every move she made had been captured by the same camera she ignored. The hospital was peaceful again, filled with sunlight and the sound of calm footsteps in the hallway. And though we didn't know what would happen to Karen next, we knew one thing for certain. She couldn't hurt Emma anymore. The truth had spoken for us, louder than any words ever could. The following week felt like a slow exhale after a long, suffocating breath. The hospital corridors, once heavy with tension, now seemed lighter. Nurses smiled again. Emma's laughter returned, and I could finally walk through the hallways without my chest tightening in fear. The nightmare that was Karen Lewis had finally ended, or so we thought. 3 days after the security footage was reviewed and the report filed, I received a call from Officer Daniel. His voice was calm but serious. "Just wanted to update you," he said. "Karen's been officially charged with harassment and trespassing. She tried to plead her case, but the footage made it impossible for her to deny anything." I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. "So, it's finally over." "Almost," Daniel replied. "She's been ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation before sentencing. The judge believes she might be struggling with some delusional behavior. She won't be coming near you or your sister again. The restraining order's already in effect." I thanked him and hung up, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, the world seemed to return to its natural rhythm. When I walked into Emma's room that morning, she was already dressed, sitting up in her wheelchair and smiling. The doctor had cleared her for discharge. "I'm finally going home," she said, her eyes sparkling with joy. "No more hospital food, no more constant checkups, and best of all, no more Karen." I laughed, my chest swelling with relief. "You've earned it, sis. Let's get you out of here." We spent the rest of the morning signing papers, gathering her medication, and saying goodbye to the nurses who had become like family. As I wheeled her out through the main doors, sunlight greeted us like an old friend. It was a perfect autumn day, golden leaves swirling through the breeze, the world painted in warmth. But as we reached the parking lot, Emma suddenly froze. "Wait," she whispered, gripping my arm tightly. "Over there." Is that my eyes followed her gaze. Across the street, standing near a bus stop, was a woman in a beige trench coat and dark sunglasses. Her hair was tied up, but something about the way she stood, that rigid posture, the tilt of her head sent a chill down my spine. "Emma," I said quietly, "it's probably just someone waiting for the bus." But even as I said it, the woman lifted her hand to her face and adjusted her sunglasses, revealing, for just a moment, a familiar glare. "Karen," I froze. My heart began pounding as she locked eyes with me. There was no shouting this time, no theatrics, just that same cold, unsettling stare. Then, slowly, she turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. "Did you see that?" Emma whispered. "Yeah," I said grimly, "but she's not doing anything. She can't." Still the unease lingered. We drove home in silence, both of us lost in thought. Even though she was legally barred from coming near us, Karen's shadow still felt like it was lurking nearby, a ghost of malice that refused to fade. When we reached home, Emma seemed lighter again. The familiar smell of our living room, warm coffee and fresh laundry helped her relax. We watched old sitcoms, ordered takeout, and laughed for the first time in weeks. But that night, as I scrolled through my phone before bed, something caught my eye. A new post had appeared in a local Facebook community group. It was written by an account named Truth. The post read, "Beware of fake victims. Some people use illness to get attention and money. I have proof that certain hospital incidents were staged to make me look bad. I won't stay silent forever." My stomach twisted. There were even blurry screenshots of Emma's hospital room, likely taken during one of Karen's earlier visits. Emma came out of her room when she heard my sigh. "What is it?" I showed her the post, her face drained of color. "She's still doing this." "I'll report it," I said immediately. "She's violating the restraining order by posting about you." And I did. I contacted Officer Daniel again and sent him the screenshots. He promised to take care of it and told us not to engage online. Let her dig her own hole, he said. The internet never forgets, and neither does the law. The next morning, Karen's post was gone. Her account had been reported multiple times and suspended. Maybe that was the final straw she needed. The last desperate act before the world stopped listening to her lies. In the days that followed, peace slowly found us again. Emma focused on her recovery, and I helped her settle back into her routines. She started painting again, soft landscapes and abstract colors that seemed to wash away the darkness of the past month. Every brushstroke felt like a step toward healing. One afternoon, while she painted near the window, she looked at me and said softly, "You know, I actually feel sorry for her." I frowned. "For Karen?" She nodded. "Yes, she must be really broken inside to do what she did. Maybe the truth destroyed her more than she expected." I thought about that for a while. Emma wasn't wrong. People like Karen thrived on control and attention, and when the truth finally stripped that away, all that remained was emptiness. A few weeks later, we got the final update from Officer Daniel. Karen had been found guilty of harassment but was granted psychiatric treatment instead of jail time. She was admitted to a mental health facility outside the city, where she would receive the help she clearly needed. When I told Emma, she simply nodded. "Good," she said softly. "Maybe she'll finally find peace." As autumn faded into winter, life returned to normal. The chaos that had once consumed our days became nothing more than a painful memory. Emma's health improved, her laughter returned, and the quiet of our home once again felt safe. On the day she finished her last round of physical therapy, we went for a walk in the park, the same one we hadn't visited in months. The air was crisp, the sky golden with sunset. As we strolled down the path, Emma smiled at me. "Thank you," she said, "for protecting me when I couldn't protect myself." I smiled back. "Always, that's what family does." We stood there for a moment, watching the sun dip below the horizon, the light painting everything in shades of orange and pink. The nightmare was over, and those scars remained. They were reminders of strength, not pain. As we turned to leave, Emma whispered one final thought. "You know, the truth really does have power," and she was right. It had saved us, healed us, and silenced the storm. The world moved on, and so did we.